Good morning. The December the 12th, 2018 meeting of the Board of Investment is now called to order. In the interest of promoting order and efficiencies of these hearings, persons who are disruptive to the hearings will be asked to leave the hearing room immediately. Meetings of the Board of Investment are open to the public for the duration of the meeting. The hearing room must be vacated at the conclusion of the meeting. Failure to comply may result in a charge of trespassing. Madam Deputy Controller, are there any corrections, additional deferrals on the agenda?
Yes, good morning. For today's agenda, the board received two protests. The first protest was received from the Green Law Firm representing Gunther Bottle, LLC. The second protest was received from Attilio Sciano, I apologize if I mispronounced the name, who's the owner of Pasta Mista. For the Pasta Mista protest, the board will not hear that, as that entity does not have standing to present it, as their interests are not any different from the general public. We have one item that will be moving to the non-routine agenda, that is page 98, for the protest for Gunther Bottle, LLC. I have to report the following abstentions. The Honorable Mayor Pugh will abstain on page 1, page 11, item 15A, and pages 177 to 178. The Honorable President Young will abstain on page 11, item 15B, D, and E, page 51, item number 1, pages 112 to 113, item 9, pages 154 to 155, and page 214, number 4. The Honorable Comptroller Pratt will abstain on pages 5 to 7, item number 6A and 6B. On page 11, item number 15C, page 80, number 4, pages 84 to 86, page 135, item numbers 1 and 2, page 156, page 154, and page 213, item number 4. The items that were on the non-routine agenda are page 98, and the orders that appear on pages 131, items 1 and 2, page 162, items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Mr. President, members of the board, that is the protests that have been received, as well as the abstentions that have been reported thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. I will direct the board members' attention to the memorandum from our office dated December the 10th, 2018, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with any corrections and additions that have been noted by the Deputy Controller. I will entertain the motion to approve all the items contained on the routine agenda.
I so move, Mr. President.
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carried. The routine agenda has been adopted. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 98, Baltimore Development Corporation, license agreement with the parties. Please come forward.
Should I come forward?
Yes. You have to state your name, and you can go first.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the board. My name is Kim Clark. I'm the Executive Vice President for Baltimore Development Corporation. The item before you is a license agreement for a portion of the former street bed of Boston Street, located in the Canton area of Baltimore. This is a license agreement for 5 years for an entity that is related to the shopping center across the street.
Mr. President, my name is Gillis Green. I'm an attorney. I'm the general counsel for Gunther Bottle, LLC, who owns the real property adjacent to the parking lot in question, immediately to the north.
Okay. What is your protest?
I filed a protest, and I'd like to read a statement. It'll just be a couple minutes, and I have a copy of it if you all would like to see it. Mayor Pugh, Council President Young, and members of the board estimates. My name is Gillis Green. I am General Counsel for Gunther Bottle LLC and its affiliated entities of the Brewers Hill Planned Unit Development in Canton. Given our time constraints, I will jump to the facts surrounding my client's protest of the proposed license agreement with BCP Investor LLC, which is the shops at Canton Crossing. Over the past 2 decades, my client has invested several $100 million in real estate development projects in the Brewers Hill PUD. The 30-acre PUD is home to over 60 companies and well over 1,000 jobs. We have attracted over 1,000 new residents to the city of Baltimore, with another 500 residents coming soon. For a frame of reference, the land, which is the subject of the proposed license agreement, is on the south side of the Brewers Hill PUD. 15 years ago, the city entered into a license agreement for this very same property with my client. Other than that $1 a year license agreement signed in 2003, Brewers Hill has not received a single dime of city taxpayer money. No pilots, no TIFs, despite having similar infrastructure expenses as many other projects in the city that have received significant financial incentives. We are here because the parking lot that my client built in 2003 is now being considered to be licensed to BCP investors for the next 5 years. In 2003, my client signed and was promised a 30-year agreement. Based on the BDC's own write-up back in 2003, a license agreement was executed as an inducement to make our investment in Brewers Hill. On the basis of that long-term agreement, my client spent $450,000 constructing the parking lot that is now the subject of the proposed license agreement. To this day, my client still pays to maintain the lot for the electricity and lighting, snow removal, and mowing the grass. In recent conversations with several former BDC employees, they too agreed that the 2000 agreement was intended as a 30-year agreement and are shocked that the city is taking my client's improvements and licensing them to a direct competitor. Among many critical comments, one former BDC staffer said, quote, "This is unbelievable. This is criminal." My client has made it known to the Baltimore Development Corporation officials its desire and right to continue to license the city property, yet the BDC chooses to ignore interested parties, thereby exposing itself to the perception that city regulations are not being properly followed and that it was indifferent to my client's concerns. Despite knowing that my client has the right and desire to continue its license, almost exactly 1 year ago, the city erected signs and barricades to prevent ours and CBREI's tenants, customers, from using the parking lot. Tenants such as Panera Bread, PNC Bank, Pasta Mista, and Gunther & Company Restaurant, just to name a few. The barricades went up during the busiest month of the year, and the shortage of parking continues to financially harm Brewers Hill retailers today. Because of the barricades, the lot sat virtually empty all last year and remains empty today, one of the busiest retail days of the year. Not once did we see more than 5 or 6 cars in the 76-car lot. Meanwhile, the 13 Brewers Hill retailers are losing business they can never recoup due to the lack of parking. Why would the city erect barricades, block parking, and intentionally harm us and the 13 tenants? It was done because certain people within the mayor's office are determined on retaliating against my client for not donating to the city other unrelated private property which the city could just condemn if it really wanted to. These city officials are willing to harm innocent tax-paying third parties, many unrelated to my client, simply to force my client into donating the private property and thereby avoid the expense of paying for it. We know that city officials are doing this because Colin Tarbert from the mayor's office told us so, and I quote, "The city will be installing barricades to close the parking lot. We're too far apart on Eaton Street. This is a courtesy. Happy holidays." That was from a year ago. Over the past several years, my client has received roughly 30 different warnings from city officials about what would happen if my client didn't donate this private property to the city. Here is a short sampling of those warnings from Mr. Tarbert directed at my client. "You know we're going to war over this, right?" Referring to Eaton Street. "The city needs an ironclad agreement prior to Planning Commission hearing. Otherwise, it will get messy. If Wells wants this project approved, he has to give us Eaton Street. The traffic mitigation fee will be $2 million. I will not approve anything else in the PUD on my watch until the Eaton Street issue is resolved. Those quotations were made in connection with Planning Commission and transportation approvals needed for another project within the PUD, which my client doesn't even control. Today, Mr. Tarver is indeed making good on his warning that he will not approve anything for my client on his watch. This is not about what is legally right, what makes good economic policy, what is in the best economic interest of the city, what is safe or what is fair. Rather, this matter today is about Mr. Tarver's relentless personal vendetta and the city's retaliation, apparently sanctioned by other officials in the mayor's office, for what it could not accomplish at the Planning Commission, at the Permit Office, and at traffic mitigation. My client did not want to go public with this. I want to be clear about that. We requested meetings with the mayor to resolve, but only got so far as the meeting with Deputy Mayor Smith yesterday, in which we requested a postponement on this matter. Members of the mayor's inner office over the past 3 years have inflicted significant financial damages on my client. He cannot undertake new development work in this city under this hostile, going-to-war environment. He has had to stop all future new development. If this license agreement is approved today and executed with another developer, then you are undermining business confidence in the city, condoning and rewarding underhanded city tactics, harming many unrelated businesses that rely on the license agreement, and exposing the city to years of expensive legal action and financial damage claims from multiple parties. This is hardly an environment conducive to economic development. Thus, I respectfully request that you do the right thing, the only legal and just thing, and what is in the best interest of the affected retailers and the taxpayers, and not approve the proposed license agreement, so as to facilitate the return of the licensed lot back to Brewers Hill before more harm is done. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. This is for you, Kim. This was a lease agreement from when to when?
All right, to be very clear, this is not a lease agreement. This is a license agreement. A license, you are only, and I'll let Larry address the legal portion of it. This license agreement has not been in effect with Brewers Hill since 2013. The renewals were based upon mutual consent in 2013, and to be clear, because this is a license agreement for right-of-way, it needs to be signed, executed by the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation back in 2013 did not agree to renew it. We just never took action for the last 5 years. We're now just taking action because we have an interested party in having a license agreement and paying a lot more money for that property. So there has been no agreement in effect since 2013. And Larry, if you want to.
So what was the license agreement, or what was it?
It was, go ahead, Larry.
A license agreement is I'm sorry, excuse me, Larry Jenkins from the Law Department. A license agreement we use when we want more flexibility on the part of the city to terminate, cancel. It avoids things that are under a lease agreement, which then involve landlord-tenant law. So that from a legal perspective, in my mind, the agreement is very clear in the one paragraph that says it started on July 1st, 2003, and it ended on June 30th of 2013. It says if they're going to have any right to extend, it's got to be by mutual agreement between the parties, which did not happen here. Now, at the time, as Ms. Clark has mentioned, at the time that the Department of Transportation was reviewing whether or not to extend, one of the primary reasons they did not want to extend was because of the red line. This property is right in the path of the red line, and we were not going to lease property or license property for an extended period of time when the red line was going to be built. So that took maybe a 2, 3, 4 year period while that was being discussed, and then of course our present governor decided not to go forward with it, and it was shortly thereafter that I guess BDC at that point decided we're going to entertain other use of this particular property. But the main thing I guess I want to point out from
But the main thing I want to know, Larry, is how much was they paying?
They were under the license agreement. The protester was paying $1 per year if demanded. So there was no consideration being given in terms of receipt from the city. However, they did make improvements to the lot. Now, discussions with Ms. Clark, questions as whether or not that amounted to $470,000. We don't have any proof of that, but the consideration was $1 per year.
Okay, thank you. You want to follow up?
Sure,
Then
just
we're
very
finished.
briefly. I know this isn't a legal panel. We would contest, and we believe that the 2003 license agreement is in effect, and we will make our arguments about the contractual effectiveness of that in court in due time. I will say that if justification is needed for the $450,000, we can provide that. As you know, it abuts Exxon property, so a significant amount of that was spent cleaning up and making environmental remediation on it.
So this is 2003, 2013?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
I'll entertain the motion.
Mr. President, I would respectfully move that the protest be rejected. There's no proof before the board of anything that counsel has asserted. We appreciate that he's here and representing his client, but clearly the matter was foreclosed back in 2013 when the protestant had no longer any right to the property. And so I would move respectfully to reject the protest
I second.
and affirm the new license agreement.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries. The second item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 131. Item 1, Department of Human Resources Biennial Performance Audit Report, fiscal years ending June 30, 2017 and 2016. Will the parties please come forward? Hey, man.
Madam Mayor, Mr. President, Board, Quentin Herbert, Interim Director, Department of Human Resources.
Good morning, members of the board. Audrey Askew, City Auditor. First biannual performance audit, Department of Human Resources. I'll read all findings and you can respond to all three. Finding number 1, average number of working days to fill civil service vacancies to 90 days, not met. Finding number 2, targets inconsistently reported in the city's budget books, not met. Finding number 3, DHR could not replicate the actual performance measure amount for fiscal year 2017, not met.
With respect to finding number 1, we accept the findings and will not provide any additional response. The 2016 target was not met. However, that target was adjusted for 2017 and going forward. With respect to finding number 2, we do not control the budget book. That's not a function of DHR. We have reached out to BBMR and are working to ensure that the information that's published in the budget book is in fact what the target date is for the agency. With respect to finding number 3, there are a number of things that DHR has done to remedy this issue. There was a spreadsheet that was in use by the former division chief for recruitment and talent acquisition. That person is no longer with the city, and that spreadsheet was corrupted, which we couldn't replicate her work. We now have more continuity in that position. We're staffed up in the recruitment and talent acquisition division, and they have a methodology in place now that accurately tracks and measures the number of days to fill civil service positions. So we're confident that when the next performance audit comes about, that we'll have data that can be replicated.
Thank you. The audit had been noted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The third item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 131. Item 2, Department of Planning Biennial Performance Audit Report, fiscal years ending June 30th, 2017 and 16. Will the parties please come forward?
Okay, finding number 1, no documentation to support targets and actual performance measure. This was for the percent of assigned building permits reviewed within 48 hours. Finding number 2, inconsistent performance measure target for fiscal year 2017. Finding number 3, performance target, measure target not met. For findings 4, 5, and 6, they relate to inconsistent performance measure targets and performance results for fiscal years 2017 and 2016 for the number of preliminary reviews completed for tax credit applications within 30 days.
Thank you. For finding number 1, with regard, Laurie Feinberg, Acting Director, Department of Planning. For finding number 1, there was we get our data from the city's permit system that's managed by the Department of Housing, and our staff person, it's a Excel report that they export and send to us annually. We didn't save it, so, and housing couldn't replicate it. So that was really a clerical error.
1, 2, and 3 can go
Right.
together.
The inconsistent performance measure, that was a staffing issue, that we changed a performance measure because we were down a staff person. And for finding number 3, the target was not met. One year, we were 3% down, but the other year, we were 8% up. So, and with regards to finding 4, 5, and 6, there was a discrepancy, as you heard, with DHR, with the budget book. Obviously, we'll be more careful. We didn't, check their numbers. And we do agree with the audit report that it's better to look at the percentage completed rather than the raw number. The raw number, we have no control of the applications coming in, so the raw number we can't manage, but the percent that we handle within a given amount of time is a better measure and moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions? The audit has been noted. The fourth item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 162, item 1, Department of Recreation and Parks Biennial Financial Audit Report, fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017 and 16. Will the parties please come forward?
President Jack Young, could all 5 of these be presented together? They are all interrelated.
Okay.
Okay, so this is for the Police Department, Recreation and Parks, Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Health, and Department of Transportation. Each of these agencies received a qualified opinion, which is a modified opinion. We have obtained audit evidence, and we conclude that misstatements individually or in aggregate are material but not pervasive to the financial statements, or we are unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence on which to base the opinion, but conclude that the possible effects on the financial statements of undetected misstatements, if any, could be material but not pervasive. The qualified opinion for each of these 5 agencies is a result of the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in grant cash balance. The cash basis of accounting is a method of accounting where recording accounting transactions as revenue and expenses only when the corresponding cash is received or payments are made. During our audit, we noted these statements had deficits on the books dating back from 2003 through 2012, still listed on the books through our audit period fiscal year 2017. This gives the appearance of a receivable from federal, state, and private grant sources. The deficits for the periods of 2003 through 2012 carried forward for these 5 agencies totaled over $87 million. The breakdown is as follows. For the Police Department, $16.7 million from 2003 through 2012, still listed on the books. BAP subsequently wrote off $12.9 million. In fiscal year, they wrote it off at June 30th, 2018 for the period of June 30th, 2017. However, $3.8 million deficit balance carried forward into the $12.7 million deficit in fiscal year 16 opening balance, and this materially impacts fiscal year 17 and 16 statements. For the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, $3.3 million carried forward. It carried forward into the $1.5 million deficit for fiscal year 2016 opening balance, and it materially impacts fiscal years 17 and 16 statements. For Recreation and Parks, $119,000. BAP subsequently prepared journal entries to write off approximately $12.9 thousand. However, the remaining $106,000 deficit was carried forward into the $986,000 deficit. Materially impacts their statements. For transportation, $14.8 million carried forward. BAP subsequently wrote off $740,000. However, $14.1 million deficit balance carried forward into the $23.9 million deficit in fiscal year 16 opening balance, and materially impacts fiscal year 17 and 16 statements. For the Health Department, $52.5 million carried forward in a deficit. BAPS wrote off aged activity. Audits noted a change in the opening balance of $47.1 million deficit, which we deemed as an error because the write-off should have resulted in an opening balance of $48.1 million net deficit. Department of Audits advised BAPS of the out of balance and received revised statements on November 28th. Due to our recommendation, due to the pervasiveness of journal entry errors noted on several other audits, we recommend that grant reconciliations and the resulting journal entries be completed timely to show an accurate accounting of anticipated receipts or closeout, and that activity associated with aged or closed grant accounts be appropriately recorded in the general fund. Internal controls over the review and approval of journal entries should also be strengthened to ensure the accuracy and the completeness of transactions posted to the general ledger. We also recommend the review of the 5 journal entries totaling $54 million on June 30th, 2017 because of the issues noted above. The Department of Audits also recommended adding a note to the financial statements that stated that making it clear that the federal, state, and other contributors would not be responsible for clearing these deficits. Finally, we recommend that the accounting division obtain training to successfully operate within the city of Baltimore. That's finding number 1 for each of those 5 agencies.
Good morning, Mr. President, Madam Mayor, Madam Controller, honorable members of the board. I'm Henry Raymond, Director of Finance. As it relates to finding 1, material weakness over grant cash balances pertaining to the Departments of Transportation, Police Department, Employment Development, Rec and Parks, and Health. The Finance Department disagrees with the auditor's finding. Finance does not agree with the auditor's conclusion that the deficit balances give the appearance of receivables due from federal, state, or private sources.
Finding number 2, significant deficiency over general accounting controls. These relate to 3 of the 5 audits. For the police, subsequent to BAPS completing journal entries to write off aged activity from the deficit balance, audits noted a change in the opening balance of $843,000 surplus, which we deem as an error because the write-off was $12.9 million, which should have resulted in an opening balance of $179,000. Department of Audits advised BAPS of the accounting error, and they subsequently corrected the error on 11/28/2018. MOED, our assessment of journal entries noted $1.2 million in errors posted by BAPS to the city dynamics on 6/30/2017. To correct this issue, a reversing journal entry of $2.4 million must be prepared. Department of Audits advised BAPS of the accounting errors and was subsequently corrected on 11/28/2018. For Recreation and Parks, subsequent to BAPS completing journal entries to write off aged activity from the deficit balance, audits noted a change in the opening deficit balance of $992,000, which we deem as an error because the write-off should have resulted in an opening balance of $973,000. Department of Audits advised BAPS of the accounting errors, and this was subsequently corrected on 11/28/2018.
As it relates to finding number 2, significant deficiency over general accounting control pertaining to the Police Department, Employment Development, and Rec and Parks, the Department of Finance concurs with the finding.
Then the Health Department needs to come forward.
Health Department. Health Department.
They're coming.
Let's see.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Mayor,
Good one.
Council President, members of the board. I'm Mary Beth Haller, Interim Health Commissioner.
Back to finding number 1, part of finding 1 relates to the Health Department directly. Federal and state grant revenue distributions and adjustments totaling approximately $1.4 million and $600,000 respectively were credited to expense account $600,000. During analysis of selected annual reports and grant balances, we noted expenditures that exceeded revenue of the period, by $3 million to $8 million. It appears that reimbursements associated with approximately 50% or more of the expenditures were not obtained during the period. It appears that contracts are not always approved timely, which will result in late expenditure and reimbursement submissions. You can respond.
I'm going to turn it over to Malcolm Green Haynes. He worked closely with the auditors on this. He is our Chief of Finance and Administration and currently serving as Acting Chief of Staff for the Health Department.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, President Young, members of the board. With respect to Malcolm Haynes, Acting Chief of Staff, Baltimore City Health Department. With respect to finding number 1, the department agrees and is concurs with the finding. Moving forward, the department has instituted more strict internal controls related to accurate crediting and debiting of grant receivables to ensure and reduce future errors related to grant accounting.
Due to the length of finding number 2, we will not state the finding in its entirety. It's incorrect control over revenue receipts. The client can respond to that.
With respect to audit finding number 2, in controls over revenue receipts, while the department is in disagreement over the total amounts that were received directly by the department, stricter controls related to receipt and coordination with programs who work on revenue billing and grant receipts have been instituted. Additionally, the department will work closely with the Department of Finance, notably the Treasury Department, to ensure that grant receivables and other billing receivables are appropriately credited into the correct budget account number.
Finding number 3, inadequate controls over non-emergency transportation. Baltimore City Health Department non-emergency transportation program spends approximately $8 million annually in grant revenue to provide last resort health-related transportation services to Baltimore City residents with full Medicaid coverage. Our audit disclosed that documentation was not available to determine whether individuals enrolled in the program during our audit period had full Medicaid coverage.
With respect to finding number 3, the department does concur with the audit findings. Since the time of the audit engagement, the department has identified a CMS authorized official, thereby enabling the department to more accurately determine whether participants in the non-emergency medical transportation program are actually Medicaid eligible. Additionally, the department has moved to work closely with the program to do a more in-depth sampling review of ride invoices and samplings of rides to ensure accurate and eligible ridership.
That's complete.
Is that all?
Yes.
Please note that all of the audits have been noted.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, Mr. President, Comptroller, members of the board, the reason we implemented this system was so that we could get transparency. And, some of these audits go back to 2012 and 13 and 14 and 15 and 16, and we really do need to be able to clear our books and make sure that as we continue to move forward, that everybody is understanding the process. I think one of the issues here, and I would ask the auditor to work with our finance department and our agencies to train them and to have conversations, and this is both for the finance and the auditor, as it relates to the coming in of grants. 90% of, for example, the health department's budget is grant-oriented, and so sometimes they'll receive a grant or get an approval for a grant, and the grant comes in at a different time. It is the same situation with the Office of Employment Development, very heavily grant-oriented. So we don't want miscommunications around, how money is received and how it is leveraged in our organization, because many of the grantees or those who are seeking state and federal grants, don't get them even though they get the approval. And so it requires the staffing up, and you heard the audit as it relates just to human services, how long it takes to staff up. So we understand this, but we want more alignment, and I think that's what the auditor is working towards trying to do, and working with, I think, all of our agencies and our finance department that we'll ultimately get there. Thank you.
Thank you, and I concur. There have been no more business before the board. We will recess till bid opening at 12 noon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. The Board of Ethics is now in session for the receiving and opening of bids. We have the following addenda to read for today. WC 1199 Ashburton Pumping Station. Please change the bid due date from December 12th to December 19th, 2018.
Okay, so this change is noted.
GS 15838 City Hall Elevators Renovations. Please change the bid due date from December 12th to January 9th, 2019.
This change is noted.
WC 1388 Urgent Need Infrastructure Rehabilitation Phase 3, Fiscal Year 19. Please change the bid due date from December 5th, the board was in recess on that date, to December 12th, 2018.
And this change is noted as well.
B5000 5567 Tree Pit Maintenance. Please change the bid due date from December 5th, 2018. Again, the board was in recess on that date, to December 12th, 2018.
Change is noted.
B5000 5588 Parts for Fuel Dispensing Equipment. Please change the bid due date, and I'm going to read from the addendum and not my sheet. It says December 5th, 2018. The board was in recess on that date, to January 9th, 2019.
And that change is noted.
Okay, thank you. WC 1388 Urgent Need Water Infrastructure Rehabilitation and Improvements Phase 3, Fiscal Year 19. Bid security is required if the bid is over $100,000. Thank you. Spiniello Companies with a bid bond. $4,233,550. Okay, thank you. Okay, I have it. R.E. Harrington Plumbing and Heating Company, Inc., with a bid bond. $4,485,801. J. Fletcher Kramer and Son, Inc., with a bid bond. $4,195,970. Metro Industries, with a bid bond. $3,488,000. Thank you. Let me reread that number again. This is Metro Industries. $3,488,581. Thank you. Thank you.
These will be referred to the Department of Public Works for review.
B5000557. Tree pit maintenance. A bid guarantee is not required. Page 10, yep, right, yep, thank you. Grassroots Landscaping Company, LLC, $607,500. New NU Leaf, LLC, $249,000.
Okay, these will be referred to the Bureau of Procurement for review.
Sorry. B50005578, Revolution Traffic Cones. A bid guarantee is not required. Okay. Acme Supplies LLC. Well, I'll have to, it really should be like 18,000. Wait, 80. I'm gonna go ahead and read that. Oh, Lord. Yes. Again, Acme Supplies LLC, $18,480. Conserve Flag Company, $154,900. Safeware Inc., $129,300. JW Property Services, LLC, doing business as JW Work Zone, $149,000. Suburban Sales and Rental Center, Inc. I'm sorry, Suburban. Sorry. I'm trying to read it. Suburban Sales and Rental Center, Inc. Oh, thank you. Doing business as Suburban Ace Hardware, $149,100. Dimensional Products, Inc., $136,000. Sorry. National Capital Industries, Inc., $124,400. OES Global Inc., doing business as Traffic Cones for Less. $129,300. Road Safety LLC, $132,500. Someone sent a gift. Arrow Safety Device Company, $131,500. District Safety Products, Inc., with a check, $126,800.
Okay. These will all be referred to the Bureau of Procurement.
B50005599, General Bus Transportation. A bid guarantee is not required. Tell them do that add total. Okay, that's it. Right, wonderful. Yeah. This is an item bid, so prices will not be read. The bids will be available in room 204, City Hall, which is right outside the door to your right, after 2 o'clock today. Reliable Transportation. Civils Transportation, Inc. Woodlawn Motor Coach, Inc. American Limousines, Inc. It's usually page 10. Might be almost towards the end, about 10 pages from the rear. Go further back. 10 pages from the rear. Might be a little less, but it's not more than 10 pages. Bel Air Limousine, Inc. DTS, Worldwide Transportation.
These will all be referred to the Bureau of Procurement.
Okay. There being no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.